Most people think becoming a millionaire is the hard part. It's not. Keeping the money is. Think about it for a second. Imagine someone who spends 10, 15, or even 20 years working hard to build financial security. They wake up early, work long hours, skip unnecessary purchases, invest consistently, and slowly watch their savings grow. Every paycheck represents sacrifice. Every investment represents patience. Every dollar saved is proof of discipline. Eventually, they reach a milestone most people only dream about. Maybe it's their first $100,000, maybe it's $500,000, maybe it's their first million, and that's when something surprising happens. The game changes. Because building wealth and protecting wealth are completely different skills. A market crash can erase years of gains. A bad investment can destroy a carefully built portfolio. Lifestyle inflation can quietly consume increasing amounts of income. Even small financial mistakes repeated over time can slowly undo decades of progress. Here's the thing. Most people focus all their energy on making money. Very few learn how to keep it. And that's exactly why some people earn millions and still end up broke, while others quietly build lasting wealth that survives for decades. Today, we're going to break down the 5 rules millionaires use to protect their wealth, because making money is impressive, but keeping it is what truly creates financial freedom. My name is Demas, and I spend way too much time thinking about money. If you're someone who feels stuck financially, make sure to hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up if this helps you out. Now, let's start with a financial belief that almost everyone accepts without questioning. You've probably heard phrases like, invest every dollar, cash is trash, or put your money to work. And look, those statements aren't necessarily wrong. In fact, for someone just starting their financial journey, they can be incredibly useful. Investing consistently over long periods has helped millions of people build wealth. Historically, the stock market has rewarded patience and discipline. But here's what most people don't realize. The strategy that helps you build wealth is not always the same strategy that helps you keep wealth. When you're trying to grow from $1,000 to $100,000, taking calculated risks often makes sense. When you're trying to protect $1 million, the rules begin to change. Suddenly, avoiding major mistakes becomes just as important as finding great opportunities. This is where many people get into trouble. They continue playing the same game, using the same mindset, even after their financial situation has completely changed. And that's exactly why understanding wealth protection is so important. Imagine you've spent the last 15 years building your wealth. You worked late nights. You passed on expensive purchases. You invested consistently, even when markets were falling. Slowly but surely, your portfolio grows until one day you look at your account and realize you've accumulated a significant amount of money. Maybe it's $500,000. Maybe it's $1 million. Now imagine someone approaches you with an opportunity. They tell you that if everything goes perfectly, you could double your money in just a few years. The potential reward sounds incredible, but there's a catch. If things go wrong, you could lose half of what you've spent years building. Now, you might be thinking, well, if the upside is large enough, maybe it's worth the risk. But here's how wealthy people see it. They don't ask, how much can I make? They ask, what could I lose? Because once you've achieved financial security, the consequences of losing become far more important than the excitement of winning. This is where psychology starts influencing financial decisions. Researchers have found that people feel the pain of losing money much more strongly than the happiness of gaining the same amount. Losing $100,000 feels far worse than the joy of making $100,000. Yet many successful investors fall into a dangerous trap. It's called overconfidence. After years of success, they begin to believe they're smarter than the market. They start taking bigger risks, using more leverage, or chasing speculative investments because previous decisions worked out well. Unfortunately, financial history is filled with examples of people who built fortunes only to lose them because they forgot one simple principle. Protect what you already have. Look, if you already have enough money to achieve your major goals, risking everything for a little more rarely makes sense. Millionaires understand that wealth is not about hitting a home run every year. It's about staying in the game, because the first goal is survival. The second goal is growth. And if you reverse that order, you may never get a second chance. Think about how a medieval castle was built. A king wouldn't rely on a single wall to protect everything inside. Instead, there would be multiple layers of defense, massive outer walls, guarded gates, watchtowers, moats, and soldiers stationed throughout the fortress. If one layer failed, another layer was ready to absorb the impact. Wealthy people approach their finances in a very similar way. They understand that no investment is completely safe. Markets can crash, businesses can fail, real estate values can decline, even stable jobs can disappear unexpectedly. That's why they don't put all their money into a single asset, no matter how attractive it seems. Look, many people believe diversification is boring. They see someone making huge profits from one investment and wonder why wealthy individuals spread their money across different assets instead. Here's the thing. The purpose of diversification isn't to maximize returns. It's to maximize survival. Imagine two investors. The first person puts their entire net worth into a single investment because they believe it's guaranteed to succeed. The second person spreads their money across stocks, real estate, retirement accounts, cash reserves, and other assets. If something unexpected happens, who is more likely to survive financially? The answer is obvious. The second investor may not experience the highest possible returns during good times, but they're far less likely to suffer catastrophic losses during bad times. And that's exactly the point. Millionaires don't build financial fortresses by predicting the future perfectly. They build them by preparing for uncertainty. Because wealth isn't protected by making one brilliant decision. It's protected by making sure one bad decision can't destroy everything. One of the biggest mistakes people make with money is underestimating the damage caused by large losses. Most investors focus on potential gains. They ask questions like, how much money can I make? Or, how fast can I grow my portfolio? But wealthy investors often focus on a different question. How much can I afford to lose? At first, that may sound overly cautious. But once you understand the math, it starts to make perfect sense. Let's imagine two investors. Both start with a portfolio worth $500,000. Investor A takes significant risks and experiences a 50% loss during a market downturn. Investor B follows a more balanced approach and loses only 15%. After the downturn, Investor A is left with $250,000. Investor B still has $425,000. Now here's where it gets really interesting. Most people assume that both investors simply need the market to recover. But recovery doesn't work the way people think. Investor A now needs a 100% return just to get back to their original $500,000. Investor B only needs about an 18% return. That's a massive difference. The deeper the loss, the harder recovery becomes. A 10% loss requires roughly an 11% gain to recover. A 20% loss requires a 25% gain. A 50% loss requires a 100% gain. And a 75% loss requires an astonishing 300% gain just to break even. Think about that for a moment. When you lose money, you're not simply moving backward. You're making the journey back much longer and more difficult. This is why successful investors spend so much time managing risk. Because avoiding devastating losses often creates more long-term wealth than chasing extraordinary gains. Look, you don't need to double your money every year to become wealthy, but you do need to avoid mistakes that cut your wealth in half. And that's a lesson most people learn far too late. Now, you might be thinking, should I invest my money or use it to pay off debt? It's a question millions of people struggle with every year. And the answer is actually simpler than most financial gurus make it sound. The first thing you need to understand is that not all debt is created equal. A low-interest mortgage is very different from a credit card charging 25% interest. Yet many people treat them the same way. Let's look at a simple example. Imagine you have $10,000 sitting in a savings account. At the same time, you're carrying $10,000 of credit card debt with a 25% annual interest rate. Many people continue investing because they're hoping to earn 8%, 10%, or maybe even 12% in the stock market. But look at the math. Every year, that debt costs you about $2,500 in interest. Paying it off is essentially the same as earning a guaranteed 25% return with zero risk. No market volatility, no bad earnings reports, no recession worries. Just an immediate improvement in your financial position. Here's what most people don't realize. High-interest debt works against you every single day. While investments compound in your favor, expensive debt compounds against you. It's like trying to fill a bucket with water while there's a large hole in the bottom. You can keep pouring more in, but you're constantly losing progress. Millionaires understand that wealth isn't measured by how much money comes in. It's measured by how much money stays. That's why they focus on net worth, not appearances. Before chasing bigger returns, they eliminate financial leaks. Because every dollar that isn't lost to interest becomes another dollar that can grow, compound, and help create long-term financial freedom. When people think about building wealth, they usually focus on investments, stocks, real estate, cryptocurrency, retirement accounts. And while those things are important, there's one asset that is often far more valuable than all of them combined: your ability to earn income. Think about it. If you're making $80,000 per year and expect to work for another 30 years, your future earning potential could easily exceed $2 million before even accounting for raises, promotions, or side businesses. That's an incredibly valuable asset. Yet most people spend far more time researching investments than improving the thing that actually generates their wealth. Look, a person who increases their income by 20% can often build wealth faster than someone who spends years trying to squeeze an extra 1% or 2% from their investment portfolio. This is where wealthy people think differently. Instead of obsessing over every market movement, they focus on increasing their value in the marketplace. They develop new skills. They learn how to negotiate. They build professional relationships. They create additional income streams. And they continuously invest in themselves. Here's what most people don't realize. The source of wealth is often more important than the wealth itself. Because if your investments decline, your earning power can help you recover. But if your income disappears and you have no way to replace it, even a large portfolio can eventually shrink. That's why millionaires don't just protect their money. They protect their ability to create more of it. And in many cases, that becomes their greatest financial advantage over time. This may be the most important lesson in this entire video, because it's the lesson that separates people who look wealthy from people who actually stay wealthy. Most people believe money exists to buy more things: a bigger house, a newer car, luxury vacations, designer clothes, expensive watches. And look, there's nothing wrong with enjoying the rewards of your hard work. The problem begins when consumption becomes the primary purpose of wealth. Here's what most people don't realize. Every financial decision has a hidden cost. Not just the money you spend today, but the opportunities you give up tomorrow. Imagine someone receives a significant raise. Instead of saving or investing the extra income, they immediately upgrade their lifestyle. They move into a larger home, finance a more expensive vehicle, and increase their monthly spending across the board. At first, everything feels great, but a few years later, they discover something surprising. Despite earning more money than ever before, they don't feel financially free. In fact, they may feel even more trapped. Why? Because their expenses have grown alongside their income. This is called lifestyle inflation, and it's one of the biggest threats to long-term wealth. Millionaires understand that wealth isn't about showing people what you can buy. It's about creating options. The option to leave a job you dislike, the option to spend more time with family, the option to start a business, the option to take risks without fear of financial disaster. Look, money is valuable because of the freedom it creates, and every unnecessary recurring expense quietly reduces that freedom. That's why truly wealthy people often focus less on impressing others and more on protecting their future choices. Because in the end, wealth isn't measured by how much you spend. It's measured by how much control you have over your life. If there's one lesson connecting everything we've discussed today, it's this. Building wealth and protecting wealth are two completely different games. Most people spend years learning how to make money. They learn how to save, invest, negotiate higher salaries, and increase their income. Those skills are incredibly important because they're what help you build wealth in the first place. But once you've accumulated meaningful wealth, the rules begin to change. Success is no longer about taking bigger risks. It's about making fewer mistakes. Look, the people who remain wealthy for decades aren't necessarily the smartest investors in the room. They aren't always the highest earners, and they don't always find the next big opportunity before everyone else. What they do exceptionally well is protect what they've already built. They avoid catastrophic losses. They eliminate unnecessary financial risks. They control their spending. They continue improving their earning ability. And most importantly, they understand the true purpose of money. Because money itself isn't the goal. The goal is freedom. The freedom to choose how you spend your time. The freedom to support the people you care about. The freedom to make decisions based on what matters to you instead of what your bank account allows. So before making your next major financial decision, ask yourself one simple question. Will this increase my future freedom or reduce it? That single question can completely change the way you think about money. And when you start viewing wealth as a tool for freedom rather than a tool for consumption, you're already thinking the way many millionaires do. Because at the end of the day, becoming wealthy is impressive, but staying wealthy is what truly creates a life of lasting financial security.